Hi, I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have all my 5-star romances that I've read so far in 2022. So I'm really excited to do this. I got this video idea from Jess over at Peace Love Books, and I'm very excited to do this because I have a bunch of romance books that I've given 5 stars to this year that I just want to highlight for funsies, especially since everything else that I've given 5 stars to is only 2 fantasy books. I'm going to go in order from the beginning of the year up until now, which is June 20th when I'm filming this. So from January 1st to June 20th, these are all the 5-star romance books I've read. So first off, we've got, oh Schweppes, we've got 2 Sophie Lark books here. We've got The Bully and the Rebel by Sophie Lark. This is books 2 and books 3 in the Kingmakers series. This is Sophie's Mafia New Adult series, so it is set at like a Mafia university where all the Mafia children go to train, and so this series also follows the children of the couples from her Brutal Birthright series. I have an entire video explaining how to read Sophie Lark, like an entire Sophie Lark video, so if you guys are curious. But this one here this is a forbidden romance and this is a bully romance. I love them both so much. Miles and Zoe completely stole me away. I had such a wild ride reading this and I was so swooned over them. And then Kat and Dean. Kat and Dean are one of my favorite couples of all time. This also has some of the best spice that I've ever read. Sophie really pulled out all the stops for this book and I freaking adored the crap out of it. And even if you think you don't like bully romances, you might rethink it. Sophie does an amazing job at bully romances. Next we have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This is one of the most surprising books that I did read this year because I didn't think I was gonna like Mariana Zapata, but I was wrong. This is when I realized that if a book is a small town grumpy sunshine single parent romance, I was always gonna be a hoe over it because that's what this is. But this follows Aurora. She has recently just been divorced from her husband. It was a really messy, really awful, really toxic divorce. And so she's moved back to her small hometown where she grew up with her mum to kind of just reconnect with her roots. She ends up renting like an Airbnb above a garage. When she gets to this Airbnb, there's this big and burly guy who like walks in and is like, "Why are you trespassing on my property?" And she's like, "I'm renting this Airbnb, I'm not trespassing." And then the guy's son comes in and is like, "Dad, please don't be mad, but I might have rented it out on Airbnb." And he's like, "I can't believe you did this." And she's like, "I will pay you triple the asking price if you let me stay here." And he's like, "Fine, you can stay here, but I don't want to see or hear you at all. Like, I want you to be like an invisible Airbnb guest." She's like, "I got you." And it is their romance. He is such a grump and she's just trying to live her life and be a nice person, to be quite honest. And he's just not having any of it. And I freaking love their romance together. The sexual tension that brewed between them was so beautiful and I was 100% here for it. And it was so good. It was so good. It was a phenomenal. We then have the Mindfuck series by Stabby Abby. Now this is hard because like it is a romance, but the romance kind of takes a backseat to all like the serial killering. Basically this is a romance between a serial killer and an FBI profiler, but the FBI profiler doesn't know that the woman he's falling for is the serial killer that he's trying to catch. I love this. Each of the books in this series, there's like five of them, and they're really short. Oh my god, so much fun. This book felt like a fever dream at this point, but I love the shit out of this book. It is definitely nuts and out there. Like, if you don't like any sort of like murdering, like graphic murder, don't read this because the graphic murder is like right there. Like, she chops off a guy's ding-a-ling and shoves it down his throat after she's killed him. High quality, like, you know, murdering right there, but not for everyone. Their romance was really fun. And this is technically like a romance series, but the romance kind of took a backseat in my opinion to everything else, but I'm still going to mention it here because like the series overall I ended up giving it 5 stars, so yeah. We then have The Words by Ashley Jade. This is a book that took me completely by surprise. My Kindle died one night and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to read. This had recently arrived from the author and I was like, screw it, I'll pick it up. Devoured it. Now there are huge triggers in this book for toxic relationships. Now there is a lot of triggers in this, especially when it comes to toxic relationships, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to fat phobia. Please look up the trigger warnings for this book beforehand. I also think I put more of the trigger warnings in my Goodreads review, so do check that out as well. So this was Lennon and Phoenix. They meet in high school. Phoenix is the popular bad boy and Lennon is the unpopular fat girl who gets shamed by everyone and bullied. And the two of them end up starting off like an unlikely friendship when Lennon ends up tutoring him, and what ends up happening is that during their senior year, Phoenix ends up betraying her really badly, and they end up meeting again 4 years later when Phoenix is a massive rock star but is really struggling with drug and alcohol addiction because of one of his best friends dying, and Lennon ends up being brought in to basically play as like his like personal assistant slash sober companion. And it's them restarting a relationship 4 years later and kind of dealing with all the trauma that they've been through. I really love this book. There's so much more to it than what I've just explained. Like, I highly recommend you just give this book a shot, even if it sounds like it might not be something you're totally into. Like, I always thought I hated rockstar romances, and I love this book. So please just give this a shot regardless. I don't want to deter anyone from giving this a shot because I think that this can really surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that they might not like this book, and it definitely is worth a chance. The next 3 books I'm very excited about. So we have Kathryn Moon's Sweet Verse, basically. So we have Baby Late Night Howlers. Love this book. I read it, gave it a 4 stars. 2 weeks later, was still obsessing over it and was like, screw it. This book is a 5-star babe. Oh my god. So this is an Omegaverse series. Baby Late Night Howlers follows Baby. Baby thought she was a beta, and then one night in her like 20s, she ends up perfuming, and it turns out that she is an Omega. And this is her kind of meeting a guy, falling in love with the guy, and then wanting to join this pack. However, this pack is like a very down and raggedy pack. They are living in like a very defunct kind of crappy place, and they don't think that they're worthy enough of Baby, but Baby wants to be with them, and so it's her romance with them. This is definitely very smut heavy. If you like Kathryn Moon's Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, this definitely feels the same way, where it's more smut, less plot. But I still freaking loved it, and I love the guys in this. Seth and Bullet were my main men. Oh my god, I loved them. They were so funny, so hilarious. This book was just like an overall fun ride, and you can't not love it. And I highly recommend you read this series in order. So read Baby first, and then Lola Millionaires. Lola Millionaires also gave her 5 stars to Lola is Baby's best friend, and Lola is a beta. After the events of book 1, she ends up being she has a lot of trauma and PTSD from some things that happened. However, she ends up meeting this beta guy one night, falling in love with him. She is invited to join his pack, but doesn't want to join his pack. And so there are some things from her past, from book 1, that are coming back to haunt her, and a lot of things going on. I can't explain this without spoiling some stuff, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. But I also really love this one. Once again, I love the beta guy. Leo was my entire heart. Like, this man literally like overnight ships, like 3-hour ships a waffle maker to her apartment to make her waffles when she wakes up the next morning after like going all night, you know? And I was like, what a man, you know? Then we have A Brush with Love by Mazey Eddings. This is one of the only traditionally published romances that I've given a 5 stars to this year. So this is a dentist romance, dentist student romance. You've got Harper and Dan. Harper is one of the top. So you've got Harper and Dan. Harper wants to become an oral surgeon. She's at the top of her dentistry class. She's going to graduate soon. She's really living her entire life and is like, you know, set to be like amazing. Then you've got Dan. He doesn't really want to be at dentistry school, but he's kind of been forced to because of his family. The two of them end up meeting one day when Harper and Dan run into each other, and she ends up baking his like dentistry mold, and she offers to like help him remake it. And the two of them set up a very unlikely romance, especially since Harper is like not looking for romance right now, and Dan is like completely in love with her, even though she's like, I'm not looking for a committed relationship. And he's like, that's fine, we can be friends, you know? And I love them to death. This book was just so much fun. It was like such an easy 5 stars for me to give. And Mazey Eddings, this is her debut, and she has very quickly become a top author for me to check out. However, I do want to say that Harper does have a lot of anxiety that she does deal with, and she doesn't like to be around noise and a lot of people, and so that is also part of this book. And yeah. We then have my babe, Corinne Michaels. This is returned to us, book 1 in the Willow Creek Valley series. I love Corinne so much. Her books are either like, only one of her books has been below a 4 stars, which is impressive at this point, okay? This follows Grayson Parkinson and Jess. Now, this whole series follows the Parkinson siblings who live in Willow Creek Valley, and their family owns like a conglomerate of like inns. They're very wealthy inn owners. Jess and Grayson were high school sweethearts, but they broke up when Jess ended up going to college because she was like, it's long distance, plus your family hates me, i.e. your mum hates me. And so they broke up. However, this takes place like 7 years later when Jess ends up getting into a plane crash because she's a flight attendant and she ends up having to go home for rehab. And Grayson is back in town with his daughter. He is now a single dad, and it's the two of them rekindling their romance. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I just love Corinne Michaels and I'm a hoe for her basically, and I highly recommend Corinne. 100% hands down. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. Next we have The Full Leaf by Jacquot. This is a teeny tiny little baby right here, but it was 5 out of 5 stars. Steamy smart. Oh my god, I love it. This is the book that introduced me to the primal kink. If you don't know what primal kink is, it is basically chasing, but sexy. Hide and seek, but sexy. You know what I'm saying? If you don't, read this book and you will find out. Oh, this is so good. So this takes place on St. Patrick's Day, but you don't have to read it during St. Patrick's Day. You're following these two best friends. They've been in love with each other for years, but don't think the other person is in love with them until we come to St. Patrick's Day night, and the two of them end up finally confessing their feelings to one another, and wham bam, thank you ma'am. I'm not going to give you much else because this is a tiny baby, and if I say anything else, I will ruin it for you. So just trust me, it is worth it. Next we have a book where if you've been on my channel at all this year, you'll know I'm not shutting up about this. That is The Confidence of Wildflowers by Micalea Smeltzer. I love this book. It was 5 stars for me. People either give this book 5 stars or 2 stars. I don't know what camp you will fall in, but do check out my Goodreads review for the trigger warnings for this book because there are a lot of triggers in it, and I don't want to spoil the book with the trigger warnings, but if death of a loved one is a trigger for you, please do check out the trigger warning in my Goodreads review, okay? So I don't want to say more than that, but you know, okay? So this is an age gap, grumpy sunshine, small town romance. Our girl Salem is 18 and our guy Thea is 31 years old. I know it's a large age gap. I know it's a large age gap. I've had people yell at me for that, but get over it. There was also technically cheating in this as well, but it was fine cheating. That sounds horrible. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, Thea has just moved in next door to Salem with his son, and he ends up hiring Salem to be basically a nanny during the days when his son is like over from his ex-wife's place. It's them kind of having this like attraction to one another and kind of like beginning a romance over the course of the book. It is a duet. This does leave off on a cliffhanger, and while it is a super beautiful, super gorgeous slow burn romance, the last 10% of this first book in the duet will feel like a bitch slap. So please be warned about that going into it. I freaking loved it. This series also does have a trigger warning in it for death of a loved one from cancer. That is a separate trigger from the other death of a loved one, but does have death of a loved one from cancer as well as a trigger in this series. And also childhood rape from a dad. There's a lot of shit that goes on in this book now that I think about it. There's a lot of triggers. Just check out my Goodreads review for the triggers. There's a lot in this series, but I really like this. I really love this book. It was so bingeable. I read it in like a day. Micalea has quickly become one of my favorite authors because of this series, and I highly recommend it. Next we have a book that I gave 4.5 stars to, but it's actually a 5-star book, and that is The One for Me by Corinne Michaels. This is a best friends to lovers romance. This is book 3 in the Arrowwood Brothers series. I do recommend that you read this in order so you can kind of see how things go. But this is Sean and Devney's book. Sean is a Major League Baseball player. Devney is working as a legal assistant. And the two of them have been best friends for years, and one night they end up kissing. And they end up realizing that there's a romance between them. And this entire series takes place, the Arrowwood Brothers series, is because each of the 4 brothers have to spend 6 months back on the family farm because of a stipulation in their father's will. Their father was an abusive alcoholic, if that is a trigger warning for you, but their father is now dead. They're just still kind of sometimes dealing with the trauma of that. And this book here also does deal with death as well. Death of a loved one. Do I read a lot of books with death in it? Anyway, whoopsies. But honestly, Sean Arrowwood is one of my new favorite fictional men crushes. So, just saying that. Also, this is a book where I started it, read like 50 pages, wasn't feeling it, put it down, picked it back up 5 months later, and then devoured it in one night. So next we have The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. Oh my god, this book will get you out of any reading slump. It is so much fun, and it is smutty Disneyland. That is right. smutty Disneyland. So you're following Rowan and Zara. Rowan is one of 3 billionaire brothers. When their grandfather passes away, there's a stipulation in his will that for each of the brothers to inherit their, you know, share in Dreamland, which is Disneyland, they have to complete a task. And so Rowan has to take on a role as the creative director for 6 months. And when he does that, he meets Zara, who has just been brought onto the creative team at Dreamland. And the two of them get off on the wrong foot instantly because he's a huge grump and she's a total sunshine, and he hates how sunshiny she is. She hates how grumpy he is. And they end up having a romance throughout the course of this book. It is boss employee as well, part of the romance in here. I freaking loved it. It is so much fun. There's a lot that goes into this, and it was just a blast and a half of a ride. Highly recommend it. This is the book that I thought was like overhyped on Book Talk. Totally wrong. Totally worth the hype. 1000% worth the hype. So yeah. We then have Pack Origin. This is a prequel Omegaverse novella. I give it 5 stars. Don't really want to go into it because I think it's like 50 pages, but it's a prequel Omegaverse novella about a girl who's a beta and ends up finding out that she's an omega, and the 5 alphas that she is foster siblings with. Next we have The Marriage Effect by Karla Sorensen. This is book 3 in the Washington Wolves series. You don't have to read it in order, but it is a bit more fun if you do. This follows Paige McKinley's romance to Logan Ward. Okay, and Logan Ward is an NFL player, and Paige is an ex-supermodel and also the best friend of the current owner of the Washington Wolves football team that Logan plays in. This is a marriage to convenience romance. Logan is the current guardian of his younger siblings, and in order to keep custody of them, he needs to get married in order to show that he has stability. And Paige, her aunt, just passed away and left her a shit ton of money, but in order for Paige to inherit that money, she has to be married. So they enter into a marriage of convenience, and that's what this is about. One of the best modern marriage conveniences I have ever read. This book was so much fun. It's also super short. It's like under 300 pages. Highly recommend you check out this series overall. I didn't love book 2 in it, but book 1 and book 3, easy 5-star reads. Getting close to the end, we then have Omega's Obsession by Sarah Blue. This is book 2 in the Heat Haven universe, and it is an Omegaverse book. So you don't have to read the prequel novella, but I do recommend it because you get a really fun Easter egg in here if you do read the prequel novella. But this follows Liv. She is an Omega. She comes from a very wealthy family, but her dad is a piece of crap and thinks that her only worth in life is being an Omega, and he plans to basically marry her off to like the highest bidder. Not like literally to the highest bidder, but like do whoever he can get the best like political alliance with. And so Liv is in love with her brother's best friend, has been in love with her brother's best friend since she was a little kid, and is completely like obsessed with him. Like she is like, her obsession is like legit, like she steals his shit because she's obsessed with him so she can have like little mementos, which sounds creepy, but it's endearing in the book, I promise. And when she ends up finding out that Dean has joined Heat Haven with his 2 other pack mates and are planning to try and find an Omega, she decides to join Heat Haven as well to try and become his Omega because he keeps avoiding her, and she's like, I'm done waiting around for you, I'm gonna take charge and become your Omega. And it's him like not wanting her to be his Omega and like keeping the reasons from her as to why he can't let that be, and her falling in love with his other 2 pack mates. And it was just so good. This is super, super hot and steamy, very smutty. A lot of shit goes on in this. There is primal play in this as well. If you are into primal play, again, this book has it. I loved it. It was like it was a very small scene of primal play, but it was delicious, and it was just an overall really enjoyable book. So highly recommend it if you like Omegaverse. We then have Bloody Union by Brooke Summers. This is a mafia romance. This is book 1 in the Maid series by Brooke Summers. You have McKenna Gallagher and Dante Bianchi. McKenna is from the Irish mob, and Dante is the heir to the Italian mafia. Dante and McKenna get put into an arranged marriage to break an alliance between the Italians and the Irish. However, on their wedding day, the Russians come in and try and kill them all. And so they end up on the run, and when that ends up happening, Dante ends up finding out that McKenna is not what she seems. It turns out that McKenna is actually secretly the head of the Irish mafia. And a lot of stuff is going on. They're trying to figure out who's trying to kill them, what's going on there. Dante is also trying to kill his dad because his dad is an awful person. So there's just a lot of shit going on in this book, but I had a lot of fun with it. If you liked Yvonne by Sophie Lark, do check this out. This is one of the first 5-star Mafia books I've read from a non-Sophie Lark author in a hot minute, so definitely recommend it. We then have Priest by Sierra Simone. This is a taboo romance from the Queen of Smut. I really do think that Sierra Simone is a queen of smut. Like, she writes some of the best smutty scenes you will ever read in your entire life. Her plot is there. I would say her books are like 70% smut, 30% plot, which is like a solid amount of plot for the way that she does things, and she really gets you to connect to the characters as well. So this is a taboo romance following Father Bell. He is a priest. One day a woman comes in named Poppy for confession, and they end up setting up a taboo romance. Poppy is an ex-heiress turned stripper, but yeah, it's their romance. I don't really have to explain much more than that. The one cool thing about this is that the entire book is written in Father Bell's POV, so it's the guy's POV the entire time, which I thought was really unique. And then last but not least, a series that, I mean, I gave 2 of the books in this series 5 stars and 2 of them 4 stars, so I'm just gonna put the entire series up here just for shits and giggles, and that is the Hades Quartet by Tate James. This takes place after the Madison Cake Quartet. You don't have to read the Madison Cake Quartet before this, but you can't read the Madison Cake Quartet novella if you haven't read the Hades Quartet. So all of Tate James's books take place in this place called Shadow Grove. Shadow Grove, there are a couple of different gangs going on there. It's a small town that is very much ruled by all these different gangs and this criminal underworld that is going on. And Hades is one of the top rulers of all the neutral territories and kind of like the ruling baddie. And turns out the ruler of Hades is Hayden, and she is a badass. Now, a couple of years ago, Hayden ended up massacring her entire family and her fiance because of reasons that I do not want to spoil. However, when this series takes place, it turns out that someone that she thought she had killed in her past is actually coming back to haunt her and is trying to take down her entire criminal enterprise and trying to get her basically ruined and thrown into prison or killed. And so she's trying to deal with that while falling in love with 3 different men. One of them is her best friend, one of them is a rival gang leader, and one of them is the guy her younger sister has a crush on. This is really fun. I loved it. It was such a blast and a half. I didn't love it as much as the Madison Cake Quartet. I just think the Madison Cake Quartet has a special place in my heart, also because I love Madison Cake personally, just way more than I loved Hayden, but Hayden was phenomenal. This book series also does have a much more emotional kind of undertone to it. Sorry, Zelda keeps doing Lord knows what, because this does deal heavily with drugs and drugging and sexual assault and rape and trauma and torture and a lot of shit. So do know that those triggers are very present in this, especially on-page rape does occur in the 4th book, so do want to put that out there. And PTSD is a huge part of this whole series because Hayden has a lot of PTSD from events that she went through. Her ex-fiance used to drug her all the time and like do stuff, and so please do know that before going into this quartet, but otherwise I loved it. All right, that is it. Those are all the books that are romance that I've given 5 stars to this year, and yeah. Let me know if you've read any of these. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like button down below. If you want to see more of me, subscribe to my channel, and until next time, thanks so much everyone. Bye-bye.